All right. Hello, everybody. We should start. So could you please turn on your cameras? All right. And so I hope you're doing okay. So today we're just going to continue talking about qualitative research methods. And last Monday we talked about personal interviews, and we said like qualitative interviews, the interviewing method we have two. We have in-depth interviews, which are one-to-one, that last from like half an hour to like 90, from like 30 minutes to 90 minutes. And the other type was focus groups. So today we're going to focus on focus groups. And so how many of you have heard about focus groups before? Have you heard the phrase before, focus group? Have you participated in a focus group before? No, nobody. Okay. So a focus group is, so it's, you can think of it as a group interview, but it's more than that. It's about collecting, like having a sample of like a cohesive group that is designed to talk about a specific topic of interest, by which you generate a conversation that illuminates the points, the attitudes, the perspectives of the uh, target sample or the population you're about to research. And so the key about it is like, so there are like two main things. Like the first one is like about the discussion. So in other words, a focus group is not in a way that, for instance, I have Jared, Fernando, Sarah, and Julian, the technical group, and then I ask each one my question separately. Actually, focus group is about engaging all of the four of them together into like a one discussion. And to have that, you need to have like a cohesive group or like a homogeneous sample. In other words, the members in the focus group need to be similar in relationship to the topic or experience you're talking about. So let me give you an example. I am investigating, for instance, like we mentioned on Monday, student satisfaction with, or like different perspective about the remote learning experience. So my sample of Jared, Fernando, Sarah, and Julian, what do they have in common? What do the four of you have in common?
They're all students at USD.
You're right. So you're all students at USD, and you're all in research methods. So they would represent the viewpoints of who, or the perspective of who?
The students?
Right, right, right. And so you get all students in focus groups. But let's say the research is also interested in the view on like how the attitudes of the professors, the attitudes of the administrators, the staff, people who were furloughed or people who were brought back, essential workers on campus, etc. That means I will make separate focus group for each, right? So you like, yeah. So you sample a group of professor in one group, students in separate group, administrator in a third group, etc., right? And so this is different when we're going to talk about surveys, and it's somewhat counterintuitive. Like the focus group, it needs to be not diverse, right, in relationship to the topic. Okay, so when we say homogeneous, doesn't mean they have to be homogeneous in all variables. Like, yeah, I could have, since we're talking about the experience of students, I need to have students. And if it's diverse in other variables, so like by gender or ethnicity or socioeconomic background, that's okay, unless you're investigating those, right? So if that's the top of the variable you're investigating. And so, for instance, I want to see how socioeconomic backgrounds affects the USD experience. All right. If I'm going to have a homogeneous group, then should I mix people from different socioeconomic backgrounds together in one group, or do I have separate focus groups for separate backgrounds? What do you think?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Right. So assuming my topic, then I want to see if the socioeconomic backgrounds of students affects their experience at USD, all right? And I'm conducting focus groups. Should I have my focus group to have like a diverse sample of students in terms of their socioeconomic backgrounds, or do I have different focus groups for different people from different socioeconomic backgrounds?
Well, if you want more of like a rich data and varied opinions, wouldn't you get people from different socioeconomic groups?
Right, but the question is to mix them together or like I keep them in separate groups?
Do you want to go, Julian? Or
Oh, no, you can go.
okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, I think you should keep each socioeconomic group in their own focus group because you're trying to find data for that specific like socioeconomic like yeah group. So
Yeah. So and yeah, you're right. So Yulissa made a good point. Like actually, you want diversity, right? Like if you want richer data, don't you want more diverse? But the key is because focus groups is about, it's in the name. You're looking for the group opinion. So what's common from like students? I want to see like what are like the common threads or the common themes like within the student body, right? So it makes sense, you see, to have a focus group for the students as opposed to the faculty members, right? Because it's about that. But then also, if I'm investigating the effect of like socioeconomic backgrounds, if I mix them on one focus group, I'm not going to hear the group's opinion, right? I'm going to hear opposing point of views going one against the other, right? And so what you want to generate in a focus group, you want cohesiveness. That is to say, like, and then the discussion would flow more smoothly, right? Because people shared same experiences, they went through the same things. There could be some differences, but also about the same topics. So yeah, about concentration. I might find some of you were able to concentrate during online learning, and some of you not so much. But all of you agree it is an issue, right? That had to be dealt with for online learning. So that's the point. You want the ideas to bounce one of each other, right? Like I won't bring someone, let's say I bring a staffer who didn't go, who does not, or still doesn't go through the same experience that you're going through, right? You want that ideas to naturally bounce off each other. Yes, Lisa.
Could another reason as to why you would have separate focus groups be that so no one would be afraid to speak compared to being all in one big focus group?
Right. That's exactly right. And I have a slide about that. But that's what I mean, like fruitful engagement. And so sometimes you see it on like, sometimes like popular shows would do what we call focus groups. And then they would bring, let's say like a Biden supporters and Trump supporters and put them in one group. And then how fruitful you think that engagement would be? Just based of whatever you've seen in the last 2 years, right?
Not very.
Yeah, right. It's not like, yeah, it won't be a very like, because part of it could be that inhibition, so you cannot really say what you really feel. And in focus group, you actually want people to express their opinions clearly and freely. And the other part, like people will start fighting each other, right? And especially if a contentious issue, you could mix, for example, liberals and conservatives, if you think about something. So if we're having a focus group about like, I don't know, ice cream flavors, I don't like, yeah, we can have diverse group in terms of like politics, or because it doesn't relate to the variable I'm studying in that case, right? But yeah, you want to have that like ability to hear like honest opinion and to have fruitful engagement. And then you do another focus group and a third focus group for how many categories, remember, or how many sub populations you're interested in. And so a focus group tends to be a bit longer than an in-depth interview, I think for obvious reasons. So it could go for like actually up to 2 hours with if you have a break, but mostly like an hour and 40 minutes. That would be max, and an hour minimum, although that's too short. It's not. It's better not to have it too small or too large. So I would say like 12 is the max. 6 is minimum. If it's too large, that's less chance for each one to speak. If it's too little, like you won't have as lively conversation as you would like to. And so that's, they arrive like 6, 7, 8 would be optimal. You would have the moderator, so some person who will introduce the topic, will put the questions, will moderate, right? Moderate the conversation. Sometimes you have a note taker, if you have money, quite honestly, if you have someone take notes. They are always recorded, right? So, but sometimes you need note takers for other things, right? Because the recordings cannot get everything, right? Like what we mentioned, the body language or the atmosphere or the tone of like speakers, the note takers can write notes about that, those specific minute things. Of course, you have the participants. Sometimes you have a camera person, sometimes just a camera. And we have room actually in campus for focus groups equipped with cameras that you can turn on automatically, and you can now record focus group without a camera person. Devices, pen and paper recorder, and a camera. Nowadays, you could use your laptop or your cell phone as a recorder. And there are apps actually for recording to suppress the noise and such, and then recognize different people. So there are apps, for instance, if we're just doing regular recording, right? If I speak, if Grant speaks, if Julian speaks, it will just record that, but it won't tell you that each voice belongs to a different person. The software used for focus groups will tell you, okay, this is person A speaking. So there's like a voice recognition feature like embedded in those softwares. And then you can then rename each one. So that's some technical issue involved with focus group recording, which is not a big problem in interviewing, right? Because you only have 2 people speaking, so it's not a big deal. When are focus groups used? So focus groups, I think it's still the preferred method in things like advertising and marketing and product development. They do focus group a lot, and it's used mostly for idea generation. So in other words, like you can have focus group about the product experience. How do you feel about, I don't know, the new Diet Coke flavors, and they'll talk to people. So how to launch a campaign. So most of the, especially the branding or rebranding campaigns that you see on TV, they're mostly the product of or like a function of focus group results. So why did you sometimes wonder, why did they pick that celebrity? Or why did they use that slogan for the campaign? Or like the different colors, and those are results of focus group, like people expressing how they felt about a brand, and then the result of that is like the creative team in advertising and strategic communication agencies will then take those ideas and implement them in a campaign, right? For product testing as well. So you can get fed in some focus groups, like different like new flavors that are not yet released to the market. You can test and then they will ask you how you feel about them, and the group can exchange right ideas, right? In political communication, also focus group is used a lot, and so you would watch, especially when you hear about what they call it exploratory committees for candidates. And what they mean is basically when a politician say they're launching an exploratory committee, that means they hired a research team to do surveys and focus groups about how that politician is perceived. They focus on things like likability, trustworthiness, what advantages or disadvantages do people see in that politician, and focus groups can get you things that are not apparent or like you cannot see on a survey, right? Because those ideas can some attitudes people cannot express on a piece of paper or directly unless they hear someone else talking. And so that sparks another idea in you. And says, when you, for example, let's say in a class discussion, and when you're hearing someone giving an interview or speech, and they say something, and you say, you know what, I have that idea for a long, long time, but I could not express it this way. Like this person really framed it the way it's exactly like I feel. But only when I heard it, okay, it became really clear to me. Right? So in focus groups, it's similar. There's a discussion about a shared social experience, let's say about the Zoom remote learning experience or environment. But you hear, when you hear another students talking about a specific issue, you could really, yeah, then relate to it, right? Even though you cannot express it that way yourself, right? And so that's like different, like if you're looking for shared, then that's the key thing, like shared social experiences, right? So you're not looking at like individual perspective. You want like what the shared experience of students, what the shared experience of, I don't know, users of, or like people who drive Tesla cars. You want to get things that at least somewhat common among the or within the subpopulation that you're looking into. So some advantages. So advantages in comparison to in-depth interviews. So focus groups are interactive. So they have follow-up questions, and so that's as opposed to surveys, but also they have group dynamics, right? So you answer one question, person A talks, okay? You then follow up with another question, person B talks, but then person C also comment on both answers, right? Because it has an accumulative nature, because everyone is like, instead of having one person, the interviewer, thinking about what people said, you have four different minds basically thinking similarly. And they can also come up with like follow-up questions or comments or interjections, those sort of things. So you would have more dynamics that can actually spark more ideas that you won't get if you're doing one-to-one interview. So you get the point, right? So that's like, and it's more stimulating, it's fun, right? I could imagine, for instance, you can think of yourself, like there are many topics, I think. You want to know what your fellow students in college, if they think similar to you or not. Whether it's about the Zoom experience, whether it's about the sense of isolation, whether it's about thinking about like future jobs, or like, I don't know, fitness, or living on campus. You're more like interested to hear as a participant, and you're more, then hence you're more likely to participate if it's a focus group rather than one person interview. So yeah, so it's more stimulating and it's more natural and spontaneous because it's not designed as, yeah, like a structured interview. Focus group are mostly semi-structured. So the moderator has, and we explained some semi-structure before. The moderator has some headlines or like key questions they want to ask, but then they will keep some room for like spontaneous or like follow-up questions, right? About like what might people comment, things people want to add, like talking about different topic, if it's also related but not necessarily in the list of questions you have, that type of thing. So it feels it's less how to put it. It's less, the answer would be less filtered or less like constructed. It become more like it represent like more the natural view of the person. You get deeper information because of that, and they are quicker to analyze. Right, okay, you have different people, and because the themes become clear, you could see clearly what represent the topics that caught the interest of all participants, in which they were more happy to elaborate, and then the topics that didn't really catch their interest. So let me give you an example about the, let's say the focus groups about the remote learning experience. I might pose a question, let's say about concentration, but I find that not many of you have something to say about it, okay? But let's say, for example, I started to mention something about, I don't know, being overwhelmed with assignments, right? Or like the asynchronicity, like, or like professors expecting you to be online 24/7, right? And all of a sudden, every one of you like have a lot to say. Like you just started like talking and talking and talking and exchanging these. Like I could get a sense of what the group members feel as a more important topic, right? Just by their sheer reaction. And so that's why it's analyzing. Whereas if it's one person, you cannot read that between the lines. What exactly they feel more enthusiastic about or not. And then some disadvantages of focus groups. So the one is because it's limited, so we have a problem with generalizability. Also, as we said with interviews, so it could be, for instance, that one focus group could give me a false sense of what is representative of the population I'm investigating. So I could, for example, have focus groups that just happen to be composed of people who really love zoo, right? And because it's a group, I would think, okay, it's more than one person, so it must be very common. But it might end up not the case, right? But just because it's convenient to conduct a focus group, I could think it's generalizable. And interactions, with having interaction between participants can have some undesirable effects, right? Uh, can you think of any example? So if we're having a focus group, and what negative effect the interaction between participants can produce?
One side of the spectrum could, like, someone could say something off the wall and have someone have a different opinion about it, like, and then it becomes an argument instead of a focus group, or instead of like a, you know what I mean? Like, I guess, like I said, it just becomes an argument.
Yeah, like that's more like yeah, in a sense that, right, like you can get into like an argument. So I don't know, it happens, right? So you could be uh, I don't know, doing a focus group on, let's say, I don't know, jars of beans, and someone, yeah, could make like a remark or a comment really unrelated, but it's somewhat offensive. I don't know, like they brought up like a stereotype, something, and it rubs people the wrong way, and then you get into conflict. So things happen, right? Like someone saying something that upsets this whole group dynamic that we're talking about, and then you end up having unfruitful discussion instead of what you were looking for. You could also, because it's a focus group, you would hear like maybe only hearing socially acceptable responses, right? So whether it's related to things you should say, because especially if you're in a focus group with people you don't know, right? Um, so you might get like some opinions you have, your set people in whatever topic, right? Whether it's about, let's say, the climate, let's say we're discussing the climate in campus, right? Or like the attitude of students toward one another. Or even like, I think the political topics are also obvious. So it would then have limitation, like people are not really expressing what they really believe. Unless what you're saying, again, if that's topic is related, you try to have a focus group that allow people to speak. So that's one thing we said earlier. But you always have some logistical problem. So you might want to do 8 focus groups, let's say, but you only have resources to conduct 4. So sometimes you might combine, you need like, you just end up combining different groups together, right? And then as last one, like group members might not be representative. So you might end up with like 6 people or 8 people, but none of them is like super active. So you just end up with a lot of awkward moments of silence, right in the middle. Like you were expecting to have a lively discussion, but then the group that you recruited was not really that responsive. So yeah, you could just like spend an hour just staring at people awkwardly. Some potential threats is like a single responder might dominate discussion, right? So in a focus group, and you have one person just jumping on to answer each question, and they take forever to answer. And when someone else talks, they cut them off and start talking. So you might end up that. So like it's hence you need a moderator to moderate, right? To say, you know what, thank you, Max, for expressing. Like let's hear from Jessica. Then yeah, like whenever someone is trying to cut people off, try to stop them politely. And so that's a threat to focus groups. Let time to express ideas. So you might find some members, um, because it's focus group, like by nature they're not the people who would start talking if someone else talking. So they would wait, right? So when someone asks a question, they would wait for other people to answer and then they would answer at the end. But sometimes their turn might not come at all, right? Like they won't, you only would get like a couple of minutes or like 5 minutes out of like one full hour to talk because they're hesitant by nature. And so there was not enough time for them. So the time limitation is also a problem that you might get unresponsive participant or participant who were not able to respond adequately to your questions or participate in the discussion. And finally, you can have group pressures can distort opinions, right? So let me for example, like give you a question, pose a question. Um, do you do you say stupid things when you're angry? Do people say stupid things when they're angry? Like you would agree. Okay. So in a focus group, it might like someone said something that tips you off, and it's different than when you said like about getting angry and then doing like just like an unproductive conversation. But it could also make you say an extreme thing that you don't actually believe, right? So just in the heat of the moment, you just want to say the opposite, the polar opposite of what the other person was saying. But then when it comes down, you actually say, you know what, that's not actually what I want to say, or like how I feel. It just came out because of like, yeah, the opinions were distorted, right? So that's one example, right? And also the other example like about group pressure or like peer pressure, right? So sometimes you want to impress people in the focus group, and so you would just agree with whatever they say because you want to be accepted. So even if you don't have a relationship with these people, so those are also like some potential threats, right? And it's then it's a role of the researcher to see, at least to look at verbal and visual cues to see if those things are happening, right? And try to probe, like ask different people, do you really believe that, for instance? Or can you say it differently? Or why did you say that? Those type of questions could ultimately make people think more, elaborate more on what they say. And so when not, based on that, when not to use focus group, so if a discussion could get emotionally charged, which topic, especially in this year, which topic do you think could get emotionally charged? Can you mention one example?
Politics.
Yeah. Can you mention like, can you be more specific? Like, can you give a more specific example?
I was gonna say like border protection.
Yeah, that's a good one, right? That's a good one. And especially if it's too soon, right? So imagine like the Floyd case, and you're doing a focus group like just 2 days after, and so people are still emotional. So if you do like a focus group at that time, yeah, things could get easily out of hand, right? Like border protection, and you're talking to people who, I don't know, some they had like a, God forbid, like we had like someone getting shot near the border or something, or some people like maybe they have relatives who just got deported, then they're in the middle of focus group and the discussion get into that. So that's like sometimes like some of these topics, uh, you need to be careful when and how you conduct the focus group, right? If you feel losing, so this is also related. So if you feel like you could lose control over the discussion, right? And it could be for different things, like for sports, for instance, right? It could be something like that. Um, uh, so that's something like, I don't know, like if you feel that you won't end up with a fruitful discussion, then it's better to talk about like to use like other methods like in-depth interview. Can you think, for example, let me give you a topic. Let me ask you something. Can you think of a topic in which you would feel more comfortable talking in private rather than in a focus group?
Would a possible topic be talking about the effects that the pandemic has had on you, like financially and also your health and mentally?
Yeah, that's a very good one, right? So imagine, yeah, we're doing the financial and psychological effects of the pandemic, and not all people feel about like emotionally. Not all people feel comfortable talking about their finances, or like if they were economically struggling, especially like in front of like other fellow students, right? And so you could like reveal them in in-person interviews, but not in a focus group, right? Or also like if you had like some security problem, like I don't know, like thinking about suicide, talking about later, yeah. Not everyone would reveal that, or like I would think most people won't reveal something as severe as that in a focus group, except if it's what's similar to focus group, in which people are encouraged to express like their traumas, their things they're struggling with. What do we call that type of group?
A support group?
Right. Exactly, a support group. So that's why, like, you would see something like, what is it? The anonymous organization, like Alcohol Anonymous, and like for addiction and stuff type things. If you know, like, you're not going to be judged by the group, then yeah, you could participate. So sometimes researchers who work with these groups could conduct focus groups because people feel comfortable, like, to talk freely. But in general, those topics that are emotionally charged are better to be conducted like with interviews or surveys. in which the privacy and emotions of the participant could be protected. You don't use focus group if you are requiring statistical projections. So in other words, if my question is, what percentage of students have struggled financially from the USD student population, right? Because I'm looking at a percentage, the focus group is not the way to go. I would need a survey that is like a large enough to capture like the percentages of the different financial situations, right? Because focus group, I want deep opinions, right? But if I'm just looking like what percentage did what or what percentage felt what, then I'm doing quantitative research, not like qualitative research like focus group. So you won't do focus group for that. If you're also interested in population representative data, you don't do focus groups, because again, you cannot extract generalizable like parameters or percentages out of a focus group. You want to see common themes, right? But you cannot tell how representative they are of population, right? But you want, like you would do, like you would say, like I've done enough focus group to tell me that this sentiment is shared by, let's say, a large or a considerable segment of the population, but you cannot say it is representative of the whole population, right? Because you would lack the statistical evidence for it. Also, and it's related with something, if the confidentiality is critical, so similar to what we mentioned, or like financial situations, or I don't know, like some traumatic experience. If you're um, sometimes people don't like to talk about, I don't know, if they went to prison or they had a traumatic experience with losing a child. They want to keep everything confidential, and so you would then look for other methods to do your research, and for testing theories, right? So focus group, as we say, is so focus group and interviews are meant for exploratory research, right? So if you remember, we said exploratory research doesn't need to have a theory. You're just trying to explore the themes within like of a topic, of a specific topic, right? Um, and so you cannot test a theory technically with a focus group. They just open your ideas. It's more inductive, right? They open, you look at the different cases, and then from that you can construct a hypothesis that then you can test in quantitative research. All right, so it's not for hypothesis. Right. So this here is, oops. So this is, so identify the method. So if it's a structured yet flexible conversation to gain a deep understanding of your issue, is it going to be one-on-one interview or like a focus group, right? So if it's a one-on-one interview, right? Um, can an interview be? Does an interview have to be structured or not?
No.
Yeah. So interviews can be, yeah, that's right. Interviews could be structured or unstructured or semi-structured, as we mentioned, right? So interviews don't have to be like formal interviews, right? Um, but then if you want, so they could be like semi-structured or it's a structured yet flexible. That's what I meant by semi-structured, and and it could have a deep, if you want a deep understanding of your issue, you can do each like either one of them. The difference is we said, like if you look at the right here, the advantages, disadvantages. Like if you want like a group sense, so you do focus group. If you want to discuss something that is emotionally charged or more critical, or like in which confidentiality is critical, you would do in-person interviews. So here is some like summary of the differences. So interviews, if let's say you're trying to converse with people who are geographically dispersed, so interviews would be key. So I don't know, people, you're just getting a sport team and the former members are in different places. So you can just do one-on-one interviews for each one. If it's a sensitive topic or you're afraid of the group influence, so we do in-person interviews. And there are less factors to consider. It's more focused. There aren't many topics, so you can just do it like an in-person interviews. If you have like focus groups, it's time and resource efficient because you can get the opinions of multiple people squeezed into a shorter period of time. So I don't spend like 2 hours doing 3 separate interviews. I can have 2 hours talking to like a focus group composed of 8 people, right? You would see almost like triple the number of participants. If you're looking for a group response, right? What do students feel? Like what do people from that feel? Or like what do people who play or women who play volleyball feel, right? You want ideas that are shared, not necessarily like some personal opinions. You want to explore different reactions and you want to see how people react to each one idea. You want that group dynamic, okay? So that's the difference. So I think let's do, I don't think we have time for that. So we only have 2 people. So what I'm going to do in the last, I thought we'd have 5 minutes, we have 4 minutes. So how many of you have heard of Peloton? Okay, so Jay doesn't know what Peloton is. Can someone explain to people who don't know what Peloton is? Who wants to tell us what Peloton is?
Isn't it like a bike in your own house? Essentially,
That is linked to what? That has
like a screen with an instructor telling you what to do, and like organized
yes.
workouts.
Yeah, so it's a virtual physical bike, virtual stationary bike. And so it's like you're enrolled in a program, like a fitness, something like there's a trainer, a virtual trainer, and then you do like, you have specific time to exercise, and it's all online, and it gives you some numbers and metrics about your performance and such, right? And so the organization want to conduct a research. They want to see how users currently use the app, how satisfied people are with the service, and what's their plans for the future. Like, do they feel like they would continue like using the app or Peloton or not? So I wish we had time to do a breakout room. However, we would continue on Friday, but could you take a minute and write in the chat one advantage of using a focus group, or one advantage of or a couple of advantages of using an interview? So the question is, would you use a focus group to investigate this subject, or a focus group? And whatever you choose, can you mention just a couple of advantages for either? So please take a minute or two to think about it and type your answer. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And have discussion with one another. So efficiency, collective opinion, yes, because it's for people who share the experience. Open up conversation. Yeah. Uh, and the ability to have a conversation, right? So if it's one person, difficult to start conversation about it. Yeah. Yeah, and you could find a similarity in terms of the example. Mhm. Cool. So yeah, those reasons, so they correspond to the advantages we say that focus groups. So we would continue to talk about this on Friday. So we'll pause here. Do you have any questions? All right. So if you're done, then I'll see you later. Take care.
Leave.
Thanks, Professor.
Who's talking?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's yeah. Hi, Jared.
Hi, how's it going? So I think my group wanted to talk about I know Sarah was in our group. They were supposed to stay and like talk about like we had this the content analysis exercise. Um
Mhm.
we didn't do too well on it. And we were just wondering like I saw the feedback and like or we all saw the comment that you posted and we understood like the feedback and stuff, but we were wondering if there's like any way we could maybe get some points back, like because we just like we went on Wednesday when you were having like some computer issues, we like kind of just took initiative and like tried to fill it out on our own. So we like finished like our whole entire like exercise on like that Wednesday, and when we came into class on Friday, we had it all complete like in like a different manner than it was supposed to be completed. We had like our own like coding guide and whatnot. So we were just wondering if like there was any way we could like try to um, make some points back.
Yeah. So I didn't want people to feel so anxious about it. So in general, there